I will start today's homily by reading from Genesis 12:1 to 4. The Lord said to Abram, "Go forth from the land of your kinfolk and from your father's house to a land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. All the communities of the earth shall find a blessing in you." Abram went as the Lord directed him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. Milestones. Life is full of milestones, and on our rerouting journey, we have reached a milestone. There's this huge temptation when you reach a milestone to celebrate and not want to go on. But there's still a journey to be done. We're just at a milestone. It's just like when you were little kids, or when I was little. I remember getting to the car, kids, we're going to the park, we're going on vacation, and it's all exciting, and we get inside, and after 5 minutes, are we there yet? And we forget the promise of the fun to come, and we want to get out of the car. Many have been asking Father John, myself, what now? Or as somebody said, what are you going to do now? As if we're putting shows on. But what are we going to do now? That is the question. We have reached the milestone, the ending of rerouting, and yet the journey is just beginning. We have arrived to the border. I didn't know it was so terrifying. I've crossed thousands of borders, so I've probably trumped anybody in here. There was various times where I've been in 7 countries in one day. In Hungary, we would cross the Hungarian-Slovak border at least twice a week, the Austrian-Hungarian border and the Polish-Slovak border, so many times. I had to change my passport out 3 times and get 6 extensions. Whenever you reach a border, sometimes you will get these no man's land in between. I remember once we reached the Romanian border and we were driving with one of the novice. And he, for some strange reason, had sent his passport to wash. As we get to the Romanian border, and he was Romanian, they let him out, but the Hungarians wouldn't let us in. So we got stuck. The Hungarians wouldn't let us one way, and the Romanians said, you can't get back in unless you pay the visa. And we said, we never really left, but you did. But we never got in, but you, doesn't matter. Thank God I was with an Irish priest who had a very good temper. Abraham, in his time, there were no real borders. Countries back then didn't have borders like today. And Father John's homily last week, there were different voices saying, do not enter. Well, The do not enters, we're afraid of what's on the other side. Well, today's the motivation: enter, cross the border. We hear these voices: don't cross the border. Because if you cross the border, the guarantee of stability, of comfort, of the things that you know, it's gone. The first time I crossed the Ukrainian border, I know there's a bridge up there somewhere. There it is. These are all borders I've crossed, so they're not just random things I Googled. This is the border on Ukraine, but I crossed it at night, but they aren't going to give you a photo of that one because it's too creepy. Because the Hungarian side, the lights go all the way up to the middle of the river, and then they stopped. And on the other side was pitch black, and all you could see were people running in front of the headlights of the cars. On the other side, the language changed. The signs changed. The people changed. The language, the alphabet, the laws. Everything changed. Abraham came up to the border and he had to cross into the world of faith. Everything was going to be different, and he was literally entering into God's country. The first milestone of Abraham was to encounter the Lord, to hear his voice, to get up and start moving toward the border. Genesis 12 seems to make it sound extremely easy, but he had to get his whole family, which implied servants, livestock. He was not able to call ahead, reserve a room, get travel insurance, buy a plot of land, set up construction. He was leaving his support base. He was old. He was retired. For Pete's sake, Lord, let me live my last years in peace. And yet God had greater plans than Abraham had for himself. Abraham had no idea where he was going. This land that I will show you is not a dot on the map. In fact, the land really isn't important. Abraham, get up, go. Where? To where I will show you. In the first letter of John, right at the beginning, this is where we are going. Right? What was from the beginning, what we have heard, and what we have seen with our eyes, what we looked upon and touched with our hands concerns the word of life. For the life was made visible. We have seen it and testified to it and proclaimed to you the eternal life that was with the Father and was made visible to us. What we have seen and heard we proclaim now to you, so that you too may have fellowship with us. For our fellowship is with the Father and his Son, Jesus Christ. Abraham's promised land was his relationship with God. It took Abraham a long time to get to that border. As Father John mentioned last week in Hebrews 12, it mentions this great cloud of witnesses. When Abraham started out, this cloud was but a puff of smoke. It took a lot of courage for him to get up and trust. When I was 14, I had these immense dreams to do something great. However, what could some scrawny, shy, clumsy nerd from Detroit do? That's a quote from my sisters. My mom had this thing going that she would pay us a penny a page for every saint book we read. And being the banker that I was, I would look for the thickest saint books I could find in the house. There was this one book, Smiling Don Bosco. I think I read it 50 times. I got quite rich off of him. Then I went on St. John Vianney, St. Therese of Lisieux. Father John reminded us of so many other saints last week. I read, and then suddenly the whole prospect of the money seemed paltry. And the only thing I wanted to do was to do something great. And life became pointless without serving him. So I got up and I went to the minor seminary at age 14. And I had no idea what I was doing. I thought I did. I was 14 years old. Our road sign this week is border crossing. In essence, it gives us another perspective on the sign of do not enter. And like that sign, it has many meanings. So let's take a few looks at what's on the other side. Why should I cross the border? I am a citizen here. And yet this is the moment. The journey is not over. We have gotten up and passed through the land of our fathers, and we have reached the border. So many tell us not to enter, but this is the moment to cross the border. As the letter to the Hebrews remind us, all of these, our fathers in faith, crossed the border. They did not receive what was promised, but saw it and greeted it from afar, and acknowledged themselves to be strangers and aliens on earth. For those who speak thus show that they are seeking a homeland. If they had been thinking of a land from which they had come, they would have had an opportunity to return. But now they desire a better homeland, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. Crossing the border will still imply a journey. We haven't reached the city. It still implies hardship and work. A new set of milestones appear, and they will no longer be about overcoming obstacles, but they also will be about attaining graces, gifts, blessings, charisms. God promised Abraham, consider how he endured such opposition. Well, as we consider Jesus, the writer of the letter of the Hebrews says, consider how he endured such opposition from sinners in order that you may not grow weary and lose heart in your struggle against sin. You have not yet resisted to the point of shedding blood. You have also forgotten the exhortation addressed to you as sons. My son, do not disdain the discipline of the Lord or lose heart. He scourges every son when he reproves him, for when the Lord loves, he disciplines, and he scourges every son he acknowledges. So forget the idea that saints run around with halos. I've had these nightmares of, if I ever become a saint, don't make a holy card of me. How they roll their eyes back and looking up in these weird positions. I wonder if they'd make one with a Mustang. There's going to be momentary struggles. There's a priest friend of mine who said, you know, the only difference between a sinner and a saint is that the saint gets up one more time. God is not afraid to teach us to walk because we might stumble. He teaches us to walk because there's the possibility that we will run into his arms. Cross the border. Once you are on the other side, the signs will change. The language, the adventure, there will be so many ways to get to that city that He has prepared for you. There is not just one way to get through God's country to Him. We are not all made the same. So last week, Father John gave us a bunch of voices that we were hearing or could hear, telling us not to enter. So just when you think things are going to be under control, I remember very well, I was just going to throw it all in, frustration. So let's take a look at what God is offering. He says, cross the border. If you decide to really live as a disciple, you will fully become what you ought to be and know how to love everything and everyone better. Cross the border. Trusting in Him will give you a control that you never knew existed and gives you peace. It's the only way to live. Cross the border. The adventure on the other side is endless. The limits put on you by the world's expectations are shattered. It is not an easy reality to grasp as Jesus' exchange with Nicodemus. He says, the wind blows where it wills, and you can hear the sound it makes, but you do not know where it comes from nor where it goes. So it is with everyone who is born of the Spirit. And Nicodemus asks, how can this happen? And Jesus says, you are a teacher of Israel and you do not know this? The world can't explain this. Cross the border. We won't care anymore what people think of us. We will be like those lovers sitting on the park bench, oblivious to what anybody else thinks or says around them. Cross the border. That lie that you're not good enough, not with all the things that you've done in your life, no longer applies because you enter the country where the law of mercy is in place, and Jesus calls you specifically. Cross the border. When Pope Benedict XVI was elected, we went to his inaugural Mass, and I heard, and I will never forget these words. No. If we let Christ into our lives, we lose nothing. Nothing, absolutely nothing of what makes life free, beautiful, and great. No, only in friendship are the doors of life opened wide. Only in this friendship is the great potential of human existence truly revealed. Only in this friendship do we experience beauty and liberation. And so today, with great strength and great conviction on the basis of a long personal experience of life, I say to you, dear young people, do not be afraid of Christ. He takes away nothing, and He gives you everything. When we give ourselves to Him, we receive 100-fold in return. Yes, open wide the doors to Christ, and you will find true life. Cross the border. It will not be too hard for you, for God is faithful, and He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. I know my own weakness, and I'm honored that so many of you expose your weaknesses to me. The honor and responsibility that we priests with our Archbishop have in representing Christ is overwhelming. We can't do this. And this parish is special because we are so aware of our weaknesses and nonetheless never give up. Where sin increased, grace abounded all the more. Cross the border. OLGC is a place for those who thirst for more than their limitations. I don't have it together. In essence, another Abraham, that's who I am. Called in weakness to go somewhere. And every day I hear him telling me where to put the next footfall. So often I'm sitting in front of the tabernacle and I'm praying about some mess that I got into. And somebody comes up to me and says, "Will you pray for me?" We should be able to go up to anybody in our family here and say, "Can you pray for me?" We are all weak, and we are all praying, and we are all traveling together. And these days, I am super nervous. As Friday, I'm waiting to find out where I'm going next. Back in there somewhere, in my head, this voice keeps ringing. They're going to just tell you, "Sorry, we don't need you anymore." I was so hard-headed when I was growing up, I thought, I'm going to die in Hungary. I'm going to become famous. Father John of Budapest, Saint John of Budapest. And it's a great thing to be a missionary in a foreign land, and then a long hospital stay, a lot of time to pray in bed, and you hear his voice say, "Go home." But I don't want to, Lord. Go home. I almost lost everything. Just said, "No, I don't want to." Crossing the border is always daunting. And yet, my dear brothers and sisters, I am home where my Father is. In this rerouting journey, we've known where we've come from, who we are, and where we're going. Trust Him. Cross the border. Stretch out your hand and take His pierced hand into yours. And let Him lead you. The Word made flesh, as He guides you into one of the most fascinating worlds of faith, as you travel with the one who loves you and has given His life for you, as He leads you back into Eden, where this all began. And we ask our Blessed Lady of Good Counsel to guide us.